Welcome back to the 80 Slasher Library. This is your friendly neighborhood 80 Slasher Librarian. Tonight, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Dreamspawn, Chapter 10. In the days after her date with Brandon, Jane found it difficult to think of anything else. She struggled to concentrate in class and had to force herself not to stalk him through the hallways. She sat with him at lunch and let him walk her home each day, but was determined not to make too big a deal over it. It was very hard. Every time she saw him, this profound unconscious muscle memory of his body against hers would steal over her and make her giddy and breathless. But despite her obvious crush on him, he did not push her, did not take their intimacy of the previous weekend as carte blanche to paw her at will. He was a perfect gentleman, holding her hand as they walked and kissing her gently goodbye. But she could feel his restraint, the subjugated desire in his body language, and it made her want him even more. Amber teased her mercilessly about it. As they sat at Lola's work table and battled their way through geometry, Amber grilled Jane for details of the date. "Well?" Amber asked, eyebrows raised questioningly. "Well, what?" Jane asked, exasperated. "What is it? 8? 9 inches?" "I have no idea," Jane said, rolling her eyes. "Double digits?" Lola looked up from the little female demon she was sculpting and whistled. She reached into her pocket and took out a measuring tape, pulling the orange tape out 12 inches and holding it up as a visual aid. Rose sat curled up on the sofa, reading J.T. Leroy's Sarah. She looked up but said nothing. "I didn't measure," Jane replied dismissively. "But you felt it, right?" Amber said. "Like, come on, give us an estimate." "Look, I said I don't know. Unlike you two, I don't have a vast mental catalog of previous penises against which to compare him." "Oh ho ho," Lola said. "Ouch." But it was big, right?" Amber persisted. "Yes, fine, okay, sure, it was big." Jane could feel a thick blush creeping up her neck and across her cheeks, remembering. "Now can we please get back to numbers that matter? You need to calculate the diameter of this circle." "What about the diameter?" Lola asked. "Was it thick, too, or just long?" "I have had it with you two perverts," Jane said, shutting the geometry book with a snap. "I'm out of here." "Why don't you just leave her alone?" Rose said, looking up over the top of her book. "Come on, Jane," Amber said. "We're just playing with you." "Lighten up," Lola said. She left the clay demon and came over to stand beside Jane. "You really like him, huh?" Jane looked at her friends and then at her shoes, a smile creeping across her face. She nodded. The next day, Brandon asked her if she would go out with him again the following weekend, but she had already made plans. She, Lola, Amber, and Rose were having the very first Petticoat Mafia sleepover and Geek Fatale movie marathon at Lola's. "What about the next weekend after that?" Jane asked as she and Brandon rounded the corner of her street. "Well," Brandon said, "Connor's having a huge party at his place that Friday night. If we win that day, I kind of have to at least make an appearance. How about Saturday?" Jane nodded, lingering longer than usual in his arms before letting him go. When the day of the sleepover came, Jane packed up her nightgown, pillow, down comforter, and toothbrush, along with a rented DVD of Carrie, her own contribution to the Geek Fatale movie marathon. It had taken a lot of thought and research on the net to find an appropriate film about misfit girls seeking revenge. She had seen so few modern movies that she was afraid she would end up having to pick something she hadn't seen, based on reviews and synopses. She was happy to find that they had made a film of Stephen King's Carrie, a novel she had actually read and rather enjoyed. Her mother was almost as excited about the sleepover as she had been about Jane's date. She was thrilled to see her daughter finally doing all the social teenage things that she had missed out on for so long. Jane was the first to arrive at Lola's. She helped Lola move the sofa and unroll the big, tacky red and green carpet remnant that she had picked up for a song in a nearby Armenian outlet. The ugly but soft carpet made a nice, cushy area in the middle of the cement floor where the girls could set down their bedding. They made a supermarket run to load up on snacks and drinks, popcorn, red vines, chips, and chocolate, plus several 2-liter bottles of soda. When they returned, they saw Amber pulling up in her cute silver Mini. The car was under a year old, but already had quite a few dings and scrapes. no doubt inflicted during Amber's drinking days. While they were helping Amber to get her stuff out of the back, Rose arrived on foot. She had a military backpack and bedroll slung across her back and was dressed in another of her curiously wrong outfits. This time, awful purple, corduroy pants, and an oversized black sweatshirt. The girls went inside and locked the door. "Geek girls are go," Lola said, and they all echoed her, cupping their fists like G's and touching them together. They changed into their pajamas, and Jane marveled at how the girls' choices in sleepwear reflected their wildly diverse personalities. Jane, of course, was in her usual flowing white nightie. Lola wore men's boxers that said, "Who's your daddy?" on the crotch, and a Dead Kennedys t-shirt. Amber was clad in slinky red satin camisole pajamas from Victoria's Secret, looking like she just stepped right out of the catalog. And then there was Rose out in left field again in her weird, long-sleeved pink flannel nightshirt, with little teddy bears hugging each other all over it, like something a 6-year-old would choose. Its childish cuts seemed particularly wrong, stretched over Rose's lush hourglass figure. They settled in and started up the DVD player, doling out snacks and drinks. Jane's film was first, followed by Amber's Ginger Snaps and Lola's May. When it came time for Rose's film, Lola whistled appreciatively at her choice. "Well," Lola said, turning the DVD case over, "here's a feel-good family film. Jane, you're gonna love this one." It was French, the title something Jane didn't recognize. Baisse moi. Moi, of course, meant me, but Jane had no idea what baisse meant. She figured it must be some kind of slang. Lola put the disc in and hit play. The movie was very amateurish looking, shot on video, but Jane was enjoying comparing the subtitles to what she was able to understand of the dialogue as the story unfolded. Following two young women and their rather depressing lives. Then, as one of the women and her friend were drinking beer and talking on a hill, a group of men showed up and the film took a totally horrifying and unwatchably awful turn. The men raped the two girls. Jane was sickened and appalled to see that actual penetration was shown as the man repeatedly punched the woman in the face. Jane could not bear to watch the monstrously realistic scene. She felt physically sickened. "Can we shut this off?" Jane asked, hands shielding her eyes from the seemingly endless torture on the screen. "No, wait," Rose said. "It's brilliant. Just watch." Not wanting to seem weak in front of her friends, Jane swallowed her nausea and continued to watch. Rose was right. It was brutally harsh but truly brilliant in its unflinching honesty. As the two girls spun out on their lunatic killing spree, the underlying feminist message became clear. But the explicit sex and grueling hyper-realistic violence was still very difficult for Jane to stomach. She was intensely relieved when it was over. Lola put in the bonus feature, a camping trifle called The Violent Years, to cleanse their palates, and as the girls laughed and joked through the ridiculously contrived story of an Angora-mad high school girl gang on a kill-crazy rampage, Jane started to feel the effects of that awful movie sluicing away. "You know, we could go on a kill-crazy rampage ourselves," Lola said. "Rob banks, rape men, blow up the school." "Like hell yeah," Amber said. "That place could use a good apocalypse." Jane remembered the party where they'd kidnapped Amber and how she had wanted to poison everyone there. "We could poison the lunchroom macaroni and cheese," Jane suggested. "Nah," Lola said. "Nobody eats the macaroni and cheese." "How about the drinking fountains?" Jane said. "Please," Amber said in her best stuck-up voice. "Only geeks drink out of the fountains. If you can't afford Evian, you might as well kill yourself." "A gas that is harmless until mixed with hair bleach?" Jane proposed. "Hey," Amber said. "No fair." "I bleach my hair too," Lola said. "Before the manic panic." "Me too," said Rose, munching on a red vine that was the exact same color as her hair. All right, Jane laughed, holding up her palms in surrender. "We need a bomb," Lola said. "A smart bomb. We could program to seek out only certain clothing labels. The Gap, Old Navy." "Tommy Hilfiger," Amber suggested. "Ralph Lauren." "That's it," Jane said. "Why be so picky?" Rose asked. Everyone in that place deserves to die. Jane was surprised at the bitterness in Rose's voice. Well, not everyone, Jane said. Not Brandon Ortiz, Amber said, and Jane mock-punched her in the arm. Look, Rose said, all human beings are pretty selfish and cruel. Some of them can put on a pretty face and trick you into thinking they care. But they only want to tear you down and eat you alive. She reached to take another piece of red licorice, and her sleeve rode up on her wrist, revealing thick, crisscrossing scars. I've been through 9 foster homes and 12 schools in the last 10 years. I'm here to tell you, everybody sucks. Everybody? Jane frowned. What about us? Yeah, Lola chimed in. What are we? Chopped liver? Rose bowed her head. You guys are seriously the first and only friends I've had since. She paused, looking away. Well, in a long time. Well, you know we geek girls have to stick together, Jane said. Rose smiled and made G's with her fists. Tell you what, she said, if you guys are serious about revenge, I have an idea to really get back at all the stuck-up popular bitches and brain-dead jocks that ever fucked with us. Oh yeah? Lola asked. Do tell, Amber said. Have you guys ever heard of the legend of Freddy Krueger? Rose asked, her willow-green cat eyes narrow and intense. Jane frowned and shook her head. Fred Krueger! Yeah, the child killer, Lola nodded. Sure, he lived in a town called Springwood. Practically a hometown boy. He murdered a bunch of kids and then got off on a technicality. The parents hunted him down and burned him alive. Jane shuddered. He was America's most prolific serial murderer of victims under the age of 12, Lola continued. And he especially liked little girls. His stats have been variously claimed as anywhere from 6 to 19 or even more. The real number died with him, so the truth may never be known. There's more than that, Rose said. Lots more. Lola raised her eyebrows. Oh yeah? Fill us in. I've been doing research for years, Rose said, digging up everything I could find. It was very difficult because many of the records surrounding his death and several subsequent linked events had been deliberately destroyed. Lola muted the TV and they all listened intently. See, his physical death was just the beginning. He has the power to enter your dreams, and if he kills you in your dream, Rose drew her thumb across her long white neck. Your history. Bullshit, Lola said. Rose shook her head. It's true. It all started with several teenagers, whose parents helped to burn Freddy. He murdered all but one. A girl went mad after her boyfriend was butchered in his sleep. He gets into your dreams? Jane asked, skeptical. Rose nodded. His physical death made him more powerful and more evil than he ever was in life, she said. He's been defeated but never destroyed. When he was alive, he was just a man. But now, he is a force of nature. And I know how to control him. Lola, Jane, and Amber exchanged a look. Okay, Lola said slowly. Shoot. He designed this jointed, bladed glove that he used to kill his victims, Rose said, holding one hand up beside her scarred cheek and splaying her fingers dramatically. Machined every piece by hand. After he was killed, one of the parents kept the glove hidden in her basement. When her daughter found it, Freddy was able to reclaim the glove and it became a dream object, existing simultaneously in both the real world and in the dream world. I know where to find the glove, in the one place where the membrane between the worlds is thinnest. She paused dramatically, green eyes flashing. The place where the agony and screams of his victims still resonate, she continued. The place where the glove was created. The basement boiler room in the old factory where he did his killing. What are you saying? Jane asked. I'm saying that if we find the glove, we can control him, Rose replied. Make him our own personal assassin. Like, you've got to be kidding, Amber said. We could wipe out the entire school if we wanted, Rose said. Kill everyone in a single nightmare. No one could stop us. Listen, Jane said, frowning. Even if this guy and his magic glove do exist, We don't really want to hurt anyone here, do we? I mean, revenge is one thing, but murder? That's a little extreme, don't you think? Amber asked. Extreme times call for extreme measures, Rose said loudly. If that bitch Shane found a way to kill her enemies and get away scot-free, how long do you think you'd be breathing, Amber? Amber frowned at the turn in Rose's voice. This is a dog-eat-dog world. You have got to get them before they get you. Rose turned away, rummaging through her knapsack for a little black zippered case. I need to pee. I'll be back. Freddy Krueger, huh? Lola said after Rose was gone. She is quite a piece of work, Amber said. I guess it's about whatever you need to believe to get you through the night. Do you believe all that about Freddy being able to get into people's dreams? Jane asked. Lola shrugged. Sounds like one of Lola's movies, Amber said. That silly little counting song from her dream echoed hollowly in her mind. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Freddy? Could it be the same man? Surely not. Freddy was not an uncommon name. Jane must have heard the jump rope song somewhere and subconsciously absorbed it without realizing. It couldn't have anything to do with Rose's dream killer, could it? When Rose returned, her cheeks were flushed, and Jane noticed a small but spreading crimson stain on Rose's sleeve, just above the left wrist. For a moment she thought of mentioning it, but then remembered the strange intensity in Rose's eyes as she talked of Freddy, and said nothing. The rest of the sleepover was fun and forgettable. The girls dished on boys and got jacked up on sugar, and tried on Lola's monster masks. Lola videotaped them all menacing the camera. Amber wore a snarling werewolf head and growled at the lens. Jane wore a worn and battered hockey mask, holding a machete, and chanted, Rose picked a weird sort of bulbous alien head with glittering insectoid eyes. Eat my death ray, puny humans, she said, holding up an orange plastic ray gun that shot sparks. The girls collapsed into giggles, and Lola set the camera aside. Even bedded down in their respective bedrolls, they still could not stop joking and giggling. Jane, giddy with senseless laughter, wrapped her arms around her aching belly and felt happier than she had in years. It felt so good to be among friends, people with whom she could laugh at the horrors of daily teenage existence. People like her. When she finally drifted off, she did not dream. Chapter 11. Lola and Jane dragged the reluctant Rose to Brandon's wrestling meet on the following Friday. She sat slightly apart, silent except for the occasional scathing comment. She had on yet another baffling ensemble, this one consisting of a too-tight black turtleneck that made her look like full-figured gal Jane Russell in mint condition, inexplicably paired with the frumpy, knee-length A-line skirt made of scratchy tan wool, and those same weird silver flats. Her hair was scraped back into two little uneven pigtails, and she wore huge, totally black sunglasses, slouching sullenly and compulsively clicking her ballpoint pen, complaining that she was not allowed to smoke. Jane thought of that killer, Freddy Krueger, and Rose's bizarre tale of dreams and death. It was so beyond the realm of the possible, yet Jane couldn't seem to banish it from her mind. Until Brandon came out to wrestle and she was able to lose herself in happier thoughts. Connor was next, being bigger than Brandon and in the next weight class up. He fought with a kind of humorless and dead-eyed determination that chilled Jane to watch. He defeated his opponent once again in under a minute. She wondered if Shane was thin enough to have sex with him yet. As they stood to greet the victorious heroes, Jane noticed that Rose had been unconsciously digging the nib of the pen into the meat of her hand, just beneath the thumb. A thin trickle of blood dripped from her green sparkle thumbnail and onto the gymnasium floor. Her face was expressionless, green eyes hidden behind the big insectoid shades. Then Brandon pulled Jane into a sweaty embrace, and she laughed, pushing him away. "Tarzan, Miss Jane," he said, pulling her back to him. "Are we still on for tomorrow night?" Jane nodded, feeling suddenly tongue-tied by his closeness, and the smell of his exertion. She rested her cheek briefly against his shoulder, but when she turned her head she saw something truly odd. Rose was talking to Connor. It was only for a second before she turned her back on him, digging in her purse for a cigarette case. "I'm dying for a smoke," Rose said to Jane, sliding an unlit cigarette between her shiny red lips. "Take a walk with me?" Jane looked up at Brandon. He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Go," he said. "I'll see you tomorrow." Jane and Rose walked around to the back of the school. "What did Connor say to you?" Jane asked while Rose smoked intently beside her. "He invited me to some kind of party tonight." Rose made a thick, sarcastic sound in her throat. "Can you believe it?" "Brandon told me about the party," Jane said. "Some jock thing. Sounds like a thrill a minute. You're not going, are you?" Rose smirked and took a deep drag off her cigarette. "Might be entertaining," she said, in a wild kingdom sort of way. "Want to come?" Jane thought of the awful party from which they had snatched the drunken Amber. She shook her head. "I'd rather eat a bug," Jane replied. "Anyway, I promised Amber I'd study with her. And then we're spending the night at Lola's. Come by afterwards if you do decide to go. Though I can't imagine why you'd want to." "I don't know," Rose said, tossing her cigarette, immediately lighting up another. "He's kinda cute." "Connor?" Jane frowned. "Sure, if you don't mind the lack of higher cerebral function." "They're all stupid," Rose said, exhaling through the corner of her mouth. "What's the difference?" "You know he has a girlfriend," Jane said. She couldn't believe Rose was even considering this. "Our pal, Shane Donovan?" "I know," Rose said, an evil little smile spreading across her lips. "I hear she's been slacking off on her girl-friendly duties." She took a drag on her cigarette, exhaled, and shrugged. "You snooze. You lose." Jane looked away. Well, if Rose wanted to get a thrill from sleeping with the enemy, who was Jane to interfere? She was a big girl after all. "Well, have fun," Jane said. "Maybe we'll see you after?" Rose nodded. "You bet," she said, in a very weird tone. When Rose came by Lola's after the party, everything changed. It was nearly 2 a.m. The girls were still up, watching Satan in high heels, and speculating about Rose's interest in Connor, when there was a feeble scratching on the door, followed by the screaming doorbell. When Lola opened the door, Rose fell into her arms. She had no shoes on, and her bare feet were scraped and raw. She was actually wearing a nice dress. Or it had been nice before it was torn and splattered with beer, and other less savory things. "Holy shit!" Lola cried, wrapping her arms around Rose and helping her to the sofa. "What the hell happened to you?" Rose was sobbing uncontrollably, knees drawn up to her chest and refusing to speak. Jane ran to get her a bottle of water while Amber wrapped a blanket around her shaking shoulders. Rose drank in silence for several seconds before speaking. "It was Connor and his fuckhead wrestler buddies," she spat. "Guess they have a share and share alike policy on that team." "What?" Jane frowned. "I thought he liked me," Rose said, tears spilling from her electric green eyes. "He said I was pretty." Amber put her arm around Rose and hushed her like a child. "Just start at the beginning," Amber said softly. "Connor invited me to that stupid party, and I thought it would be a lark to have a little fun with a dumb jock, and maybe piss off Shane Donovan while I was at it. He was super nice to me all night, all full of compliments and everything. We started making out, and he asked me to go with him into one of the back bedrooms. When I saw all the other guys there, I tried to run, but they held me down." "Who?" Jane asked, slick nausea filling her throat. "Rose, who did this to you?" "I don't know all their names." Rose glanced up at Jane and then looked away too quickly. Jane grabbed her arm much harder than she meant to. "Rose," Jane said, "you have to tell me. Was Brandon there?" Rose said nothing, tears spilling down her cheeks, and Jane felt as if she had been kicked in the stomach. "Oh, shit," Lola said, putting a hand on Jane's arm. Jane shrugged her off and stood numb and sick. "Rose," Amber said, "we have to call the police." Rose shook her head violently. "No," she said, "no police. It'll be their word against mine, and no one will believe me." She wrapped her arms around herself. It's happened before. No one ever believes me. Then let's go kill the fuckers, Lola said, vehemently. Rose laughed bitterly. Are you going to fight Connor Hall and the whole fucking wrestling team? Personally, I don't advise it, and trust me, I ought to know. We have to do something, Lola said. They can't just get away with this. There was a long moment of silence. Jane's nausea swelled, crushing her with a poisonous fury. How could he? She had let herself be charmed by Brandon, and even thought she knew him, but she was horrified to think that he was capable of participating in something so despicable. Trust shattered. She was too profoundly hurt to even cry. There's only one person who can help us, Rose said. Not your killer dream guy? Amber asked. Get real. I can't do it alone, Rose said. I need your help. You can't be serious, Amber said. You really think we can control him? Lola asked. I know we can, Rose said. It's the only way. Jane? Lola asked. The three girls turned to Jane. Jane said nothing. She pulled her little cell phone from her bag and went outside. Standing in the driveway, Jane dialed Brandon's number with shaking fingers. It rang several times, and then a sleepy woman's voice answered. Bueno? I'm sorry, Jane said, barely able to force out the words. Is Brandon there? Not yet, the woman said with a thick accent, then a pause. No, wait, he's coming. An eternity of muffled Spanish on the other end of the line, and finally Brandon's voice. Howdy, beautiful, he said. I was just thinking about you. His voice was slightly slurred, his southern accent thicker than usual. Have you been drinking? Jane asked, cold fury in her belly and clogging her throat. I had a few beers. Why? He asked. I didn't drive. Rose is here, Jane said. So? Brandon paused. What's wrong? Are you okay? No, I am decidedly not okay, Jane replied. Tell me what happened to Rose at the party. There was a long silence on the line, then a soft exhale. What did she tell you? Never mind that, Jane said, louder than usual. Tell me what happened. Connor and some of the guys had a little fun with her, that's all. Jane was shaking, almost unable to speak. A little fun? What can I say? Brandon replied. Some girls are into that sort of thing. Did you have fun? Jane asked. Suddenly his voice sounded much more focused and sober. Jane, he said, you're not serious. What did she tell you? Why do you keep asking me what she said? Jane felt hysterical, her tears getting closer and closer to the surface. Why don't you just tell me the truth? I am telling you the truth. Rose came to the party and told Connor she wanted to have a gangbang with him and some of the other guys on the team. Gangbang? She repeated the horrible phrase in a choked voice. They went around together asking guys to participate. She kept pulling down her top and showing off her titties. They asked me, but I said no. Jane, I said no. Then she went in the back room with Connor, Dave Carslip, Dave Worthy, Kevin Park, and Rich Tremont. Went with them. That was the last I saw of her. She said they made her do it. Now the tears started. She said you were there. What? A cold silence on the line. Jane, come on. You gotta believe me. I would never do anything like that. Her dress is all torn, Jane said. She's crying. Are you calling her a liar? Jane, he said, you don't really believe I would do something like that, do you? My mother would have my cojones if I ever did anything to hurt a woman. You know I would never do that. He paused. Look, I know she's your friend and all, but there is something not right about that girl. All those scars? I'm serious, I think she's really messed up. Jane hung up. She could not stand to hear his voice. How could he try to make it sound like Rose was crazy, like she asked for it? Jane's feeling of betrayal was profound and suffocating. The little phone sounded its cheerful ring, helpfully displaying Brandon's phone number. She hit the power button and turned off the phone. When she went back inside, the others were waiting. "Jane," Lola said, "are you okay?" Jane shook her head. "Rose," she said, "tell me the truth. Did Brandon help do this to you?" Rose looked away and nodded. "He says you wanted it, that it was your idea, but that he didn't participate." She turned back, furious green eyes flashing. "I asked for it?" she spat. "I fucking asked for it? Dirty little slut that I am? I obviously wanted 6 guys to hold me down and jack off in my face. In fact, I just can't get enough. Story of my fucking life. I guess I wanted my dad to fuck me when I was 6 years old too, huh?" Shocked silence, and Rose pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "And you're sure Brandon was there?" Jane could not let it go. "Rose, I have to know." Rose looked up at Jane, cat eyes burning. "Well, it wasn't Connor's puny little peto that made me bleed." Jane barely made it out the door before vomiting into the bushes lining the driveway. Rose came out, still wrapped in the blanket, and put her arm around Jane. "I'm sorry, Jane," Rose said. "I didn't want to tell you, but it's better that you know what kind of guy he really is. How they all are. This is a shitty world we live in, and everyone wants nothing more than to open you up like an oyster and eat all the good stuff, leaving you with nothing." Jane wiped her chin on the back of her hand and looked up at Rose. "You really think this whole Freddy thing will work?" Rose nodded. "I'm sure of it." Lola and Amber appeared in the doorway. Jane looked at the faces of her friends, her only friends. "Fuck it," she said. "Let's do it." Hey, that has been chapters 10 and 11 of A Nightmare on Elm Street Dreamspawn. Short chapters, but a lot just happened. This story just took a major turn, and fast. And wow, Rose is quite the little manipulative little sociopath. Really. As the reader, I know she's full of crap. And she is playing these girls like a violin. I want to get everybody else's opinion if you're listening to this and you actually listen to my outro instead of just turning it off after the chapters are done. I'd love to get you guys' input and what you think Rose is up to here. Is she telling the truth? And is Brandon the one that is the lying manipulator playing Jane? Or is it more likely that Rose needs these girls to go in with her to face Freddy, and she's playing them, knowing what it takes to get them to take action? I'd love to hear from you guys and hear what you think about it. And I'm really looking forward to the next 2 chapters. I'll be back tomorrow with a live stream, my first ever Q&A on this channel. I'm looking forward to talking to as many of you guys that can show up. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please be there. I'm going to hold the drawing for the 750 subscriber drawing celebration that I brought up a couple weeks ago, back when we only had 750 subs. It's crazy that 2 weeks later we have 1,000 more subscribers than we did 2 weeks ago. Just channels growing, it just blows my mind. Other than doing the celebration drawing for 750 subs, I'm going to be announcing the details of the big 1K subscriber celebration drawing contest. I'm going to be giving those details out tomorrow. There's going to be 4 winners in that contest. So please tune in. I'd love to hear from you guys. You can ask whatever you want. You can give me some requests for books you want me to read in the future. Whatever. We're just going to hang out and have fun. I'm not even going to set a set time on how long the stream's going to be. Just as long as it takes to get all the questions you guys have, to let you know about the details of the next drawing, and to find out who the winner is of the last drawing. Well, it's that time of day. The library's closed for patrons. Please join me next time for more of my selections out of my personal 80s slasher collection. Thanks for listening, and pleasant dreams!